Alright, to roadmap, it's going to be NC then AC. First, go to the observational framework. Extend observation 1, which tells you due to the term any, my only burden is to prove a minimum of one example, since any refers to a spectrum of ideas throughout a totality. Then, extend observation 2, which is that there's no locational contextualization, and extend observation 3, that or means I can address either the rightness or the wrongness of an action. Then go to contention 1 of consequentialism. He says I have no empirics. I would say first, no empirics are needed since I'm not debating a specific policy option, I'm simply addressing an ethical framework. And second, extend the thought experiment analysis, which he drops, which would also respond to the no empirics argument that governments hypothetically have to make the most probabilistic outcome through tests, empirical or analytic. Then extend the Harris evidence, which tells you that government must weigh consequences first and foremost. Since everyone is equal within a polity, governments must treat everyone equally as such, and the only way to do so is to maximize utility, which links into the Dworkin evidence, which tells you the only way we can maximize egalitarianism is to maximize utility as well, since everyone is equal, and we can't preclude anyone from a decision calculus. At that point, both of those pieces of evidence have been dropped, which gives us a clear, overarching ethical framework to use to determine if something is right or wrong, which indicts the entire AC, since all of his AC is dependent on not knowing consequences. Then go to contention 2 of independent scenarios. His first argument is that I am trying to bias you. Well, first, I'm not trying to bias you, I'm simply proving points of history, saying that these have been points of history and points of current-day events, which are crimes against humanity and which are horrendous crimes against people in general. So let's go to subpoint A, the genocide in Darfur. First, he says it's not a political decision. Well, first, I would say it doesn't have to be a political decision as long as it ties into the definition of a political debate, which is any, as I pointed out, any opposition within a polity. And since there is opposition within the polity of Sudan, then this would entail linking to the resolution. Then he says, well, I don't prove intent or even implicit consent. Well, I would say he didn't read the article that I said, which tells you that the government has been implicitly condoning the actions of the militias. They are the ones giving the arms for the militias to use mass extermination, and also have not tried to stop the militias from doing so. So if that's not implicit consent, I don't really know what is, and it might even be explicit consent at that point. And then he says, well, the Holocaust was one person. Well, he's not looking to the Nazi elite as well, and also the German people who didn't stand up against the Holocaust. Then, go to subpoint B of child labor. He says, well, it's needed to stop abject poverty for people. Well, my argument is not explicitly talking about general child labor. My argument is that the implementation of child labor is horrendous on the fact that they are prone to diseases and other forms of sickness and could result in death, and you don't want children in that, environment. That's just not right, and it's immoral at that point. Then go to subpoint C of the sex trade. He says there's no link to political decisions, however, cross-apply my argument I made before, that political decisions don't matter as long as it links into the political debate. And then read the two articles he gives you, because both authors try and indict the idea of sex slavery and the sex trade, saying that it's wrong and should be abolished on the international scale. Then go to subpoint D of racism. He says first, it's not political, however, if you read the source I gave you, and my explanation in the last speech is that it is political on the fact that the Aborigines are denied welfare benefits, which is a direct governmental policy, so that indicts the government as well, and also on the fact that the Aborigines were not allowed to raise their children in that culture known as the stolen generation. And then also extend the independent analysis of Africans and Muslims who received de facto forms of racism. Then go to subpoint E and F, where he tries to say it's wrong on the fact that it ties in with religion. However, I would say religion in the context of a polity or governmental policy makes it important in this fact that since you're saying religion, Sharia law, is the reason why women are being exploited, and the government is the one doing that exploitation within society, and they're the ones allowing it and enforcing it. So I'd say you would have to also indict the government as well. Then go to subpoint G of war rape. He says cross-apply to politics analysis. However, again, cross-apply that politics don't matter as long as it ties into a political debate. Then go to contention 3 of fiscal responsibility being as economically right. Extend this. He dropped it cold in the last speech. At this point, there is no way to vote affirmative on the fact that if you look to the observational framework, since I've since the burden of any, meaning minimum burden of one example, has been cleanly extended, then since he dropped contention 3, drops are concessions, so he's conceding that fiscal responsibility is correct economics, which proves a comparative right, and as long as that's true, I've met the minimum burden, so there's no way to vote affirmative at that point. But let's go to the AC anyway. Contention 1 of effectiveness. He said, well, effectiveness can be mutual, but remember, cross-apply the analysis I give you at subpoint A of mutuality, which tells you as long as he is defining mutual and non-mutual as two separate dichotomies, then he's implicitly saying that non-mutuality is true, which means that then there is a right and wrong political, there are right and wrong political actions within the political system. Then cross-apply the consequentialist analysis of the thought experiment, again, which he dropped in his last speech. Then my second response is, well, unknown results don't negate the future result. He doesn't respond to this, it goes cleanly extended. Just because we don't know now doesn't mean that the result won't be true in the future, which just makes logical sense, is that once you have an action, there's going to be an action to precede it, or which will be the result of the governmental action, so the result is going to exist in the future. But I would say extend it further by saying that debates would exist while in policy is going on. So insofar as there are policies like the healthcare debate, which will be implemented soon, the healthcare debate will obviously go further than that, so there is a way to define efficacy while a policy is being implemented. Then go to subpoint A of mutuality. He said, well, it's not true for MLMs, but that doesn't respond to the argument where I said he assumes that there are non-mutual points, which means that there are right and wrong answers, and extend the argument where I said controversial does not equal relativism, saying that just because a claim might be controversial doesn't mean that all claims of that fact are right. Then go to contention 2 of long disputes. He says, well, my argument of length of disputes is talking about, and heliocentric versus geocentric is theory, and in all of these cases we're talking about statistics. But first, I would say theories are created via evidence, and since evidence is based off of physical or mathematical pieces of analytics, then I would say statistics and theories are intertwined together. You can create a theory through a statistic, just like how we have economic theories based off of economic models which use statistics. So at that point I would say my argument still stands on the fact that just because a dispute is long doesn't negate that the result is correct or incorrect. Then extend the argument I made against global warming, which he dropped, where I said the correct answer to global warming is the one that is more on par with science. Then you can extend my analysis of the economics debate, which tells you that there are fundamentals that people can deduce about economics. Insofar as that is true, which he dropped, is that there are ways you can deduce a true economic model in comparison to economic models that don't work, just like the fact how totalitarian command economies don't work. This has been proven time and time again, like in the Soviet Union and other communist regimes, is that ultimately it works at first, but then since the economic model is flawed, it ultimately fails. Then go to contention 3 of support on both sides. He says, well, I can't make a universal claim at that point, but remember, I'm not making a universal claim, I'm simply making a comparative claim, that one is better than the other, and since that links into the definition of right and wrong provided by me in round 1, then I'm linking back to the resolution. So, I would say two biggest points to refer is the fact that, one, there is no way for the affirmative to win, because I've already linked into the burden through contention 3, and his entire analysis is flawed on the fact that he's trying to indict a governmental obligation through consequentialism and egalitarianism by saying that, well, we don't know at this point. But even though that's true, and I've admitted that, that doesn't negate the future result, and that's what his whole premise is based off of. His premise is based off of ignorance. So insofar as that is true, there really is no way to fully vote affirmative, because there is at a point where you could use probabilistic methods and methodologies to prove that something is comparatively better than something else. So at that point, I think it is a clear negative ballot. Thank you.